Stephen H. Ross. Welcome to. I don't even know if that's your actual
It's
middle.
definitely not.
Okay, it's definitely. I've known you for a while. Oh man. Okay, well we can get into that in another episode. But welcome to episode 29 for Chinwag Nation. We are talking about keeping small problems small. Steven and I just love to get into things about leadership and talk about leadership, and this is one that's come up often for us in our career. This concept of keeping small problems small, and this is our opinion. It doesn't reflect past, current, future employers. It's us just having a good chin wag and talking about uh, leadership things that we find important, leadership things that we find are critical to think about and consider if you're a leader of people or even just an individual contributor who leads in an organization and has to operate with influence, or you're a leader in a faith-based community, or you're a leader in your family. I think the things that we talk about can are relatable, in all industries. But for tonight, we're talking about keeping small problems small. And as with each episode, Steven, I prepare. I know you prepare a little bit here and there. And the first thing I wrote down uh, is it fair to say, I mean, from your perspective, and I understand there's nuance and variation in the space, but is it fair to say that the higher you go up in an organization, right? So if you're an organization that has levels of leadership, the higher you go up, the bigger the problem you're paid to solve, right? So like the first thing that comes to mind is a CEO of an organization, or an executive director of a nonprofit, or right, they're paid to make these big strategic decisions and solve these big, kind of hairy, complex, sometimes even like looking out longer term problems. And I'm like, I want to say yes, right? Like if I think about the leadership roles that I've been in, um, the weight feels heavier, right? As I've gone up, because the impact of the decisions that I'm asked to make is greater, right? And
Yeah.
so that's I think what's coming into me writing that and me expressing that. But I'm curious what your thoughts are. I'm curious, like from your very expansive, long, uh, you know, resume in the leadership space, like how does that resonate with you? Like what comes to mind for you?
Yeah, man. In like the most black and white sense, right? Yes. Um, I would say that the higher up you go in an organization, um, the more you will be accountable for. Doesn't
Mm,
necessarily mean that your people aren't responsible, but you're still accountable for particular outcomes, right? Your decision making authority assumes more risk, right? And some of that
mhm,
comes with solving problems, but to your point as well, it comes with strategic direction, right? And if you hire a good team, I mean, problems will always occur, but less problems will occur depending on how you've developed your organization and how you've delegated tasks and delegated strategy through whatever operational effectiveness that you're looking for. But I think one of the concepts that we're going to most likely talk about today is that a lot of times big problems, as we're talking about them right now, are the result of just multiple escalations, right?
sure. Yeah,
And that
absolutely.
doesn't necessarily mean that there wasn't an opportunity to solve that problem at a much lower level, right? And
Well,
so,
yeah.
like sometimes small problems become big problems, and those small problems could have been addressed, right? And so, what I don't want people to think is that they're not necessarily empowered at their level to solve big problems, because in
Mm,
reality, right, things snowball. Um,
that's
and
true.
if
That's fair.
someone is empowered within their role, especially what I would call, I'm trying to be sensitive here, but like a lower level role,
Hmm.
right? If they're empowered to have autonomy and authority over their role and are able to have some problem solving space, then some of that stuff may not snowball all the way up to, say, a CEO or a VP or whomever.
Is it fair to say that if people aren't empowered to solve their problems, then the problems will always be big?
They're going to
So,
be bigger for sure. Yeah.
right, I think that's kind of the rub, with
Yeah.
leadership and being in a leadership role and not empowering your people. And I think, you can reverse engineer that, right? And say, if you empower your people to solve problems at a lower level, chances are problems aren't going to be as big.
For sure. I
Maybe,
mean,
maybe.
I
Obviously, it's always it depends kind of a situation, but
similar to compound interest on an investment with problems, I think that there's a compound nature of avoidance.
mm,
Like similar to interest, right? Avoidance compounds. So one avoided conversation becomes two assumptions, or two assumptions becomes resentment, or resentment becomes distance, or distance becomes dysfunction, right? Like it just snowballs. And
oh, I see what you're saying. Like it could be a singular scoped issue, like, hey, we're not going to meet our sales targets, or
right.
because of an economical dip. But
Yeah.
if you just like pretend it's not there, right, then it
Yeah.
becomes a
Right
morale
people have,
issue.
right. And if the right people had the, to the assumption that you were making before, like if people didn't have the autonomy or the authority, the empowerment to solve problems, right? You're not going to have that A to B communication to the right people to solve the problem earlier, because I don't look at small problems, and I'm curious how your philosophy will differ here, Brian, but I don't look at small problems and big problems as like apples and oranges. I think problems are problems, right?
I
And
I just
I, I
I
don't
don't know.
think I don't think small problems are small because of their size. I think small problems become big problems because of delay, avoidance, ambiguity, the belief that someone else will handle them, whatever it may be, right? But they all sort of core and stem from the same thing.
Yeah, I can't kick this. I can't kick this leadership persona, and I don't know if it's biased just from experience. I've come across a lot of really really great leaders who are humble and all about autonomy and all about supporting their people. So this is it's definitely a generalization, but I can't kick this persona that um, there are some leaders in an organization who prefer escalation, right, to the point where like
Mhm.
they want to be the person to solve the big thing,
Yeah,
right? They want to be in that position. They're empowered to be in that position. But you and I both know that actually, if it doesn't come to you, if you're not the one always solving the challenges and the problems, then you're leading your culture in a way that, and I'm not saying place the risk on your people, right? I'm talking about
yeah,
empowerment of people. But I think there's a certain level of identity,
yeah,
when you get to a higher level role. The assumption is you're supposed to be down and to the left and the right, and you're supposed to solve everything, right, as it relates to
yeah,
challenges in your organization or challenges in your team.
for sure. And I mean, it absolutely depends on leadership preference, and frankly, how that plays out is a pretty strong, I would say, like cultural indicator, right? Because
Sure.
I've worked for many different leaders. I would say I've worked for leaders who, on that spectrum, yes, want to be the ultimate accountable and responsible party for making decisions as it relates to problems. And I've had other ones that are, hey, I'm delegating that authority to you all, escalate it. Need to escalate, right?
Over delegate.
Right. Right. But I've been in situations where, I've escalated problems and was rewarded for that. Like, I'm really glad that you brought this to my attention.
Hmm.
Good flag on this risk.
Hmm.
But I've also been in situations where escalations have been translated into somebody's feelings of like your ineptitude or your incompetency, right? Like,
Mm.
oh, you weren't able to solve that? Like, what's
Yeah, but
going on here?
that response, I think, is it reinforces your point earlier in that if somebody gets punished, for lack of a better word, for escalating a challenge, right? Um, they're likely never going to escalate something again,
Yeah, yeah,
right? They're
for
not
sure.
they're likely never going to ask for help or request thought partnership on something they're coming across. And all everything will become a big problem, I think, at that point.
Yeah, yeah, because I think in a leadership space, right, when we're talking about leadership communities and developing leaders, I would say leadership is less about, say, preventing every problem
Hmm.
in my opinion, and it's more about creating an environment where people surface problems early, honestly, and without fear, right? Like,
So that's one way to keep a small problem small.
yeah,
You know, encourage an environment where people are empowered to do that. I can see that. I can
yeah.
appreciate that for sure. What like from your perspective, what are some other things that foster that type of an environment or allow an organization or a culture to keep small problems small?
I mean, I think it's like anything, right? There's when it comes to culture, we've talked about this a lot. Like, talk is cheap,
Mm,
and you not only do you like set up your strategy, but you also set up your operating norms when you're working with the team, right? And at some point, if you say, "Hey, I want my team to surface problems early, honestly, and without fear, and you can bring all those problems to me. Um, the earlier, the better. And I'd like to make some of these potential coaching opportunities happen, right? Because we have the luxury of time to be able to solve these. Um, the first time somebody comes and does that, right? Like, how do you respond? And do you legitimately coach them through it? Do you pat them on the back and give them praise for flagging a risk that was beyond their experience, or they didn't know what to do? Are you judging or are you teaching? Right?
hmm
Because people are going to tell stories, about their experiences in your cultural efforts, both positive and negative. And so this is very much one of those opportunities. And then, based on your experience, say Brian comes to me, he came to me early without fear, and honestly, he flagged a problem. We solved it that same day, right? We nip it in the bud. Um, there's opportunities to share that story amongst the rest of the team as well. Like, hey, we talked about, these are the behaviors that we're hoping that our team has. I want to thank Brian for bringing this opportunity for me. Here's what happened, right? We were able to address it here. Had Brian waited a week, this is what it could have been, right? And so this is, we want to highlight and make these almost symbolic and um, I should say like symbolic narratives to reinforce the culture that you're trying to build around that.
Yeah, I you you actually I have four things written down. I think you hit three of them
All right, lay it
in
on me.
in the span of 3 minutes. So I'm gonna read back what I wrote because I think they align really really well with to what you just shared. And then I'm gonna challenge you with a question, and I want to get your perspective. And I'm curious, folks who are watching this now. I've seen a few people popping in and out. Folks that will watch this later, and would love to hear your thoughts on this as well. But I wrote down publicly acknowledge the positive action of challenging the leader in a space. So, um, if you are empowering your people to lead within their roles, you're also empowering them to think differently than you as a leader. You're also empowering them to potentially take a different course of action than you would take as a leader. You're also empowering them to challenge your perspective when a problem pops up and you propose a solution. And so, uh, when that happens, when those things happen, that modeling of the behavior that you're hoping to see within your team happens, like there's an important next step to publicly acknowledge the positivity of taking that leap of faith, right? The positivity of taking that action. Um, so it's not just promoting that and promoting decision making at a low level, but it's also creating space for you to be challenged, right, as a leader as well. The second thing I wrote down was create a culture where escalation is rewarded, not just celebrated, but that there's a space for shared learning, right? So if somebody escalates something, right, you're celebrating that, and then to your point, like you're bringing that to the team to say, like, hey, what this is the thing that happened. So you're normalizing challenges and problem and the sharing of the learning that happened from that.
Mhm.
Um, I think this all kind of ties back to culture too, which is like one of your key points. And the last thing I wrote down is don't dismiss, don't sometimes if a problem happens and a solution's proposed and you have a work experience or a life experience that tells you that won't work, right? I've seen it a million times, especially if you're a seasoned, tenured leader, you've been around the block, right? And somebody comes to you and say, here's the problem, here's my path forward. There can almost like a muscle memory, a knee-jerk reaction to just boom, like just immediately dismiss it. The
Yeah,
infeasibility of it, the long history of it not working in your experience. So I wrote down, don't dismiss, be curious. Because to your point, if somebody escalates, if they bring something forward and the first thing they experience is something negative, they're it's going to be rare that they open up again. It's going to be a long road back. It's going to be a long road back from that, right? So um kind of similar to what you shared, but a little bit different in ways too.
absolutely. Yeah. And I, I'm curious because you said based off of that you were going to challenge me with something.
Oh
Curious.
yeah, uh I kind of forgot what I was going to challenge you with, but I think the challenges was for you was, oh no, I remember now. um with what you propose, is that still a possibility? um and I'm curious from your perspective, uh if your team member actually does propose something that you don't agree with, right?
For sure. I
And
mean, go ahead. I didn't
well,
want
you don't agree with it, and it's not what's best for the organization from your perspective, right? So they
to. Yeah,
have a challenge, a problem. They have a belief in a feasible path to solve it, but you disagree with it. Like
yeah,
what's the path forward from you? How would you manage that? How would you handle it?
for sure. I would say that these dynamics shift based off of what level within an organization you're in, because the relationship with your boss, I think, changes the higher up you go. There's like a certain level
Sure.
of authority and autonomy, and sort of expectation of how communication flows up and down between those roles. But what I've learned is, and at least how I like to operate, is my direct reports are very empowered to drive. Well, they have the authority and the autonomy to drive things the way that they think they should be driven for their particular work. And my hopes with that is that we and I would say actually kind of my requirement is that just communication is key, right? If decisions are
Yeah,
being made,
sure.
it's letting me know what decisions are being made and why. If there's opportunity to propose a decision, let me know. Because what I've found is a lot of times you end up in your role because you have a certain amount of experience within whatever subject matter expertise you're working within,
Yeah.
and that experience translates to like not just how many successes you've had. Like, in fact, that's very small in what measures your experience. It's how many mistakes have you made and learning opportunities have you had and
Mhm.
things have you seen, right? And so chances are, like, if you're reporting to somebody, they my hopes will be that there's a certain level of expertise of like, I've seen this before and
Sure.
here's how it's right.
Yeah. Fair enough. Yeah.
But I think it's important to note that I think it's incredibly powerful to notice even small issues in your people, right?
Yeah.
So if maybe they come to you confused, maybe they're showing signs of withdrawal, maybe they're frustrated, maybe they're exhausted, right? Pick your word, right? But if you're responding with care, I I think that's not just only good management, that's a sign of respect that your people will feel. And so even if
Mm.
somebody comes to you and says, I want to go this direction with this thing. I have, in my leadership experience, had a couple of options that I can move forward with, depending on the level of risk associated with that decision.
Mhm.
Sometimes I will allow my team to learn and kind of coach them through it. Okay, we'll go with that direction. Just
Mhm.
know here are some of the risks that possibly could happen,
Mhm.
but I'm here to support you, right?
Mhm.
And maybe I know the business partner that they're working with, or I know the team that they're working with, or I know the outcome as it's going to be, at least the high probability chance that it's going to be. And I'll let them run with it so they can have that learning experience.
Mhm.
There are times, and I would say it's probably not that often, but it does happen where I've had to tell my staff no. Um, but when I say no at that point, it's usually understood there's enough respect and trust with the dynamics between my direct reports and myself that if I'm saying no, there's probably a very good reason for it. And it's either to
Yeah.
protect that person or protect that team or protect that process. Maybe there's a certain level of urgency. Maybe there's a political landmine that somebody just had no
Yeah.
idea or existed. And then we talk through that. Right. Um,
Hey,
but it
but what
with
you're
some of these variables, right?
but what you're describing, those sound like big problems already. And the ones that you would maybe pull up and take care of
I
and
mean,
kind of
Brian, I think you and I have we have some shared experiences here, but this could be something. This could be something simple as like, I want to hire this person, and I'm
yeah.
like, all right, yeah, that's what you want to do, you know.
Flashes of the past. Okay. Fair enough.
Um,
Fair enough.
so they oftentimes become big problems,
Yeah, sure.
and how you address that, I think, is really important. But
Right.
I mean, contextually, right, it can happen in something
Totally.
just that
Or
simple.
or you inherit a problem, right?
Oh, for sure, yeah, yeah. And I want to put it out there because we have a dear friend. They'll know who they are. If they're watching this, they've been on here a couple of times in the chat. But there's a
Okay.
time where like I wanted you to not hire somebody, and you were like,
Yeah.
"No, this person's really good,"
Yeah.
and I was wrong. I was wrong. This
Yeah.
person was very very good, and now I consider them a dear friend.
Yeah.
But
Fair enough. Fair enough.
I'm willing to admit that I've
I
I'm wrong.
yeah. Yeah. You're a good. You're a good leader, Stephen.
Okay.
No matter what anybody who's watched this says to me, you know.
That's So that pretty much tells me that that's Joe. Uh,
Yeah, right. Totally. My wife,
where
for
is
those.
she, by the way? She's not on here today. There's no
No,
comment
no,
from Joe.
she had to go pick up my Axel, my son, from a friend's place.
Oh,
So yeah, our favorite fan has not joined us. Hey, I wrote down one more thing because when I think about leadership, the first thing that comes to mind is there's a lot of people. There's a lot of peopling, and I'd say a good chunk of my time managing people or managing teams is working through the people stuff. And sometimes there's a manifestation of a problem that's not really there because it's peopling sometimes can be emotional. Actually, a good chunk of time, it's usually an emotional. The first response to things is an emotional thing, right? And one of the things I wrote down is encouraging one-to-one direct communication, right? So if
nice. Maybe.
somebody somebody poses a problem they have with another team or another team member or another group, encouraging, right, that direct communication. I think that's one of the harder things, I think, to manage through or work through, when you're dealing with an organization and trying to keep small problems small. But I've seen a lot of benefit and power in people just, I wrote down, picking up the phone, and having a conversation. And when I think about it from a cultural perspective, like not forced, but almost expected. Like when a new employee starts on the team, like, hey, we foster an open space where if you have a challenge or something that somebody did or said rubs you the wrong way, um like, pick up the phone and let them know.
Yeah.
And not in a like, hey, you jerk, you pissed me off, right? That's probably not gonna work out too well, but more so like, hey, I'm struggling with this thing and I wanted to talk through it with you, uh approach. But I think one-to-one direct communication is probably one of the most impactful ways that I've seen small problems stay small, both on the people side, but also on the, like, actual business problems, organizational
For sure.
problems.
And you want to talk about a root cause thing, right? That can be addressed right away. The stronger your relationships are and the stronger your network is,
Yeah.
my goodness, the
Yeah.
easier it is to solve problems. If you can pick up the phone and be like, holy hell, what the heck is happening here, right? And people know that you're well intended because you've had 18 coffees together and
Yeah. Yeah.
you
Mhm.
know this person's birthday, right?
Yeah.
They're like, oh, this is him coming out of me from respect. He wants to solve
Yes.
this right away,
Yeah.
realize it's in my area. Um, versus, if you don't have that rapport with people, you're now like you're not just navigating the problem, you're navigating the relationship.
Yeah.
And I would say like any strong relationship, professional or personal, as my counselor likes to say, right? There's rupture and there's repair. Rupture and repair. And unfortunately, in some professional environments, and I guess even in personal environments, sometimes you need a mediator, right? But it's very hard to repair if you're not communicating A to B or person to person, right?
Mhm.
Um, you need to have those honest conversations, those crucial conversations, and clarifying intent, and realizing that oftentimes people misunderstand each other, or they make mistakes, or
Mhm.
no matter how hard you try, you are occasionally going to disappoint somebody, right?
Mhm.
And you may have the best of intent, but if somebody doesn't know you, you
Mhm.
need to be able to clarify that intent. You need to be able
Mhm.
to develop that relationship. You need to repair
Mhm.
after the rupture. And that just
Mhm.
fortifies those relationships moving forward.
I've been in a couple roles in my career where I was leading teams and I never had that opportunity to just like do that work, right? The environment that I was jumping into was fraught with intensity and fraught with challenges, and it was like you jumped into that, right? And the relationships kind of had to be built along the way, and that's a lot harder than actually
Yeah.
like joining a team, looking at the structure and the culture and the environment of the team, and then taking your time to build relationships before you actually start making decisions. I remember, uh, I don't know, about midway through my state career, I had a new leader. I was in a role where I was doing internal consulting for an organization, and I had a new leader ask me, and I brought this up in previous episodes as well, but that new leader asked me, like, what should I do? What is your advice for how I should show up and what I should do? In this new team that I'm going to be overseeing and running. And I said, if you can do it, take your first 60 days and just get to know people.
Yeah.
Have a one-to-one with everybody in your org chart.
Yeah.
And then I said, icing on the cake, continue to have one-to-ones throughout your entire career in the organization. No matter how far down, and I'm talking about hierarchy here, but no matter how far down they are in an organization, you always carve out time for them.
Yeah. Absolutely. And to that point, I want to come back to hierarchy because we kind of started with hierarchy,
Yeah.
uh, and it's become a recurring thing.
Yeah.
Depending on, and I'm going to say the health of the culture of an organization that you work for, you may be astounded by how much power some people have that are quote unquote lower on the org chart,
Oh
you
yeah.
know?
Yeah, for
So,
sure.
so
Yeah. Yeah.
keep that in mind, the next time you're walking past somebody and you think that your title gives you more inherent value than somebody else's title. Yeah.
I've also found that like there are organizations that attempt to do matrix style, right? They try to flatten out the org, but uh even in the absence of hierarchy, power creates hierarchy.
Yeah.
So there's what's visible on the org chart, and then in terms of flat or struct or levels, but then there's the power structure within that, which in essence could convey levels of decision making and levels of power, right? So I don't know if it's I would I know there's been attempts with like holacracy and matrix style organizations, but I'd be interested to find an org that truly operates in a flat way.
Yeah.
I don't I I'm sure they're out there, right? But they don't come to mind right off the top of my head.
It's it's tricky because I mean there's a lot of benefits to both types of
Yeah,
orgs.
sure.
And I think I feel like I'm just blurring personal and professional examples. I think of I think of being a parent, right? Like my kids will tell me time and time again that they hate boundaries. I want to be, I mean, two of them are 5 years old and younger, and so they won't use these words specifically, but they would like to have like an equal share in how this family operates, right?
Yeah, of
We
course.
want to be a matrixed family, but I can tell you, like, having set boundaries for my kids
Yeah.
in which I still allow them room enough to fail and create their own problems and learn from them.
Mhm.
But they desperately need and even want boundaries at times because the second they leave my front door, right, I have no control over the world in which they're entering into. And here they've got consistency, they've got their safe space, they know what to expect, right? And
Yeah.
um, I think the same can apply to a workplace, right? Like Matrix is great, but at some point, decisions do have to be made, and there oftentimes needs to be guardrails in which, like, how far off scope are you going to go when you're trying to solve a particular problem? Um,
Yeah.
and people oftentimes need a little bit of that shepherding, right? Like,
Yeah.
hey, I want you all to work together, but at least move in that general direction, right? Uh, and
As the great Brene Brown would say, clear is kind.
clear is kind, right?
Yeah.
And you need a certain level of sponsorship because again, like somebody has to be able to make the decisions. Um,
Yeah, I think sponsorship's a good overlay on this conversation, as it
yeah,
relates to the concept of sponsorship, which is to, you know, provide resources, remove barriers, and then get out of the way.
yeah, yeah,
And there is to your point, there is a certain function of uh only certain people can remove certain barriers,
yeah,
and only certain people can approve or provide the resources needed to actually solve the problem. And I
for
think
sure.
that begs, a question around, like, are the resources in place? Uh, are the barriers removed to actually solve problems at a lower level? And sometimes they need to get to a certain point for actually to even be messed with or focused on. And I mean, we could probably do a whole episode on this, but it makes me wonder if that's the broken part, where, there's only so many resources to go around. There's only so many barriers that can be removed because of just time and effort and energy. But is it like a self-fulfilling prophecy? If we decide as a team or an organization, we're only going to give these issues our time and our energy, and we're only going to remove barriers for these issues, are you basically creating an environment where, like, that issue that you're solving could have been addressed 3 months ago if you actually focused on the smaller
Yeah,
issues?
yeah,
It's like this vicious loop.
yeah,
Yeah,
for sure. And
probably too late in the game to talk about it tonight, but that
yeah, because
just
I mean, I always say like it depends, depending on like what it is that we're talking about, right? And
yeah.
I'm reminiscing about moments in my career, and I remember being Washington State's labor market information director pre and then during and then post COVID.
Mm,
And, there's how organizations bring problems to you that would be, somewhat traditional. Some of these things like snowballing or certain barriers that hadn't been removed or, things that we've been talking about. But then there's things like global pandemics where they just slap you in the face and you're just like, I've got a big ass problem that I've got to go solve like today. And it goes
yeah.
right to my level and beyond, right?
Yeah,
And so,
that's a really good point. Like, there is a certain level of comfort with making decisions at your level without all the information,
yeah,
regardless of the culture around you. You just know the decision needs to be made. And then there's a certain level of just, like, courage needed,
yeah,
to uh to do that as well. So
yeah.
yeah,
And the scientific method is a thing, man.
but what?
The scientific method is a thing.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I, I want the world to know what is the scientific method, and that is sometimes you're giving it your best guess, and you're waiting to see the result to figure out whether or not that was the right
Yeah. Yeah, there's a certain level of, like, you got to go through you got to go through a global pandemic to
for
figure out
sure.
that that's actually like a tried and true way
Yeah,
to go about it.
and if you're
Yeah.
humble enough to say like, "Hey, I made the wrong decision at day one, but now that
Yeah.
I've got 5 data points instead of 1 data point, like, this is the direction we should go." I think that's
That
important.
I think that flies in the face of the limbic brain, man.
Yeah,
We just want to make sure, we want to control things so perfectly that it's predictable and safe.
yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, we really kind of went down the rabbit hole there, but
Well,
I
you actually so you're touching on something that I did think of before our podcast, and that was sometimes a problem or a solution may be completely out of your control.
yeah,
And sometimes it's
that's
important
right.
enough to like take a step back and pause and say,
Hmm.
with everything that's going on here, what's within my control?
Yeah,
And then
that's
like, how
great.
do I unload all the stuff
Mhm.
that feels like stress or
I
anxiety or pressure, right? And get that off because there's nothing you can do about it. And then
yeah,
think strategically about what can you do. It's
I
within
think
your
that,
control.
and I think that that kind of brings us back full circle to the original part of our conversation, and that's if the decision's at the right level, it's still a small problem.
Yeah,
So if you're in a position where you're like, this is out of my control, this is out of my scope of influence, this is out of my scope of breath, give it to your leader, or give it to the leader, of have your leader give it to their leader, because that's the right level. And if it starts at the right level, then it's still technically a small problem, right? If it's the right problem at the right level and it starts there, it's still technically keeping a small problem small.
yeah.
And like just in the last minute, uh our our favorite fan showed up, Steven.
Hashtag late.
Sorry I'm late. I was driving people around.
Joe, we were asking about you
We were wondering where.
because whether Joe shows up or not is really binary as to whether or not we have an audience on this podcast.
That's yeah. That's true. That's true. Hey man, I was thinking about this. This is episode 29.
That's crazy.
So I know, man. Like episode, we should probably go back and like look at some of our original ones. They're probably just as bad as this one. I'm just
Oh,
kidding.
for sure. Yeah.
No, no.
Let's yeah, I don't actually like looking at myself talk. But one of the things that like I
You do
appreciate
great.
about
You do great, man. You do great.
thank you. One of the things like I appreciate about this platform, but I also don't appreciate at the same time is after we have our live, right? Like I see it pop up on
Yeah.
different socials, like, hey, look at this. And it's like these little previews of my
Of you.
face talking. And I'm like, ah,
Some
no.
things, some things, Stephen, are out of your control.
That's true.
You
My
just need to
face is
set. You just need to set the emotional aside, set the stress aside,
keep showing up, man.
and just take a breath. Just take a breath. I like that advice. That's a good thing to land on. To keep small problems small. Well, hey, we wish you all a great week ahead. Happy July 4th to you all, and hope you had a wonderful weekend with your friends and family, and you head into the week just supercharged and excited for what's ahead. We, as you can see in the bottom of my screen, we're all about building communities. So if you're going through anything or want to talk through anything in a leadership space, we're always available for a chat. So reach out.